welcome to the launch of the 2023 Township CX Reports. So this report is brought to you by the end-to-end digital CX agency, Roger Wilco, and our partners, Survey 54. They are a consumer intelligence platform. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Whether you're on Facebook or LinkedIn, we'll be taking questions a bit later on for our panel. Please keep the questions short. If you want to ask a panelist a question, maybe just add a name in your question. Try to keep the questions short so that we go through as many of the questions as we can after we've unpacked some of our insights. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. So this year's Township CX Report is an interesting one in that we've found a number of things where township entrepreneurs, township businesses, as well as the audience in general is telling us. So when we launched this report in 2021, the country and the world had just come out of lockdowns. We'd just come out of COVID. We were talking about things such as the new normal, which of course now feels old. So one of the things that was happening a lot in the township market at the time was that there was a lot of uncertainty. And a lot of this uncertainty was as a result of whether lockdowns would come and what business would look like, what the township market would look like, given all of these variables. So there was also a lack of freely available data around the township market, which we as marketers, as marketers at Roger Wilco and also the industry really needed. We still need it. So we created this with our partners, Survey 54. When we launched, one of the things that was evident was that there was this bleak outlook in the marketplace around what the future looked like, around what would happen next, around what this new normal that we're talking about would look like. And that was in 2021. In 2022, we found that there was the rise of the township brand, where when you walked around, call it 5 or so years ago, you would see that spaza shops, supermarkets, and all of these stores would be wrapped in big brand sort of branding. In 2022, when we were doing our research and walking around, we realized that there was this growth of the township brand. There was this emergence of pride within the brands that were not just in our townships, but also in South Africa as a whole. South African fashion was one of those things that was really sought after by the township market. This year, the overarching theme that we are finding is this made in the township and made in South Africa kind of pride within our audience. And you'll see this as we unpack the findings. You'll see this as our panel also takes us through some of the thinking as well. So this is what the report this year has. This is just a quick look at what's inside the report. So it's made up of 6 chapters, and these chapters cover everything from people's attitudes towards brands, savings, as well as shopping. So in a nutshell, the first chapter, or one of the chapters, is a chapter around people working online. So in 2021, we asked people if they had made purchases online, and 70% of them told us they had. This year, we flipped that question around a little bit to find out if people are working online, hustling online, making a living and doing things. And of course, this year, 60% of our respondents tell us that either they or someone they know has started working online, they've started selling products online, and they've started doing things online to support themselves. And when we look deeper at the data, 70% of the self-employed and 67% of students are telling us that they've started doing this. We are also realizing that among people who are unemployed, 57% of them are telling us that they work online and that someone they know has also started working online. Chapter 2 is a chapter around people's spending habits within the township economy. And one of the things that we asked here is is where people are shopping, what they are buying, and some of the things that that resonate with them in terms of what they are buying. And once again, people are telling us that 25% of the respondents say they spend between 25 and 50% of their income within the township. 25% of respondents say they spend more than 50% of their earnings within the township environment. So we're seeing that people are spending within the township, they're spending at spazas, they're spending at the local supermarkets, and that there's this circulation of money within this market. And this is one of those chapters that we'll unpack a little bit with our panel. And then the third chapter is a chapter around savings and stokvels. So here we asked people. So last year we asked people if they belonged in to stokvels, and they told us they had, and they gave us some amounts that they were likely to save with a stokvel or put away with a stokvel. So this year we delved a little bit deeper into the ages and how people use stokvels. One of the things that we are finding as a sort of big insight, or at least big finding in terms of this year, is that people who are between the ages of 18 to 24 are the fastest growing segments who are adopting stokvels. And as stokvels become younger and younger, they also become more tech savvy. So they use platforms like Stockfella to manage their finances, the finances of the stokvel in the main, and to interact and engage as a stokvel. This chapter is one that we'll unpack in another webinar. We won't get into it much today. And then, of course, there is the chapter around people telling us that they are looking more for value rather than prioritizing brands. And this could be as a result of a number of things. It could be because of employment or unemployment issues. It could be because of a tough economy. It could be, by and large, the trust that they have with either the spaza shop owner, the supermarket owner, and people within that space. So 22% of respondents said they've bought clothes, furniture, and paid for services that are offered within the township. And 45% said that they would buy a product that is made in the township. So this is where we are seeing the growth of this made in the township or made in my community kind of insight. And then the next chapter looks at delivery services. So one of the things that was happening a lot during lockdown was that there was news coverage around delivery services emerging from townships that had emerged just before lockdown. But during lockdown, it looks as though they began to fly because they were they were starting to, the market was responding well to them, and people were ordering products and services using local township-based or township-grown delivery services. And this is another one that we'll unpack with our panel today. One of the ones that has seen massive adoption and massive media coverage is a platform like Delivery Speed, which is based in Namaskral. We then look at fashion as well, the adoption of the local fashion brand and how much people love these brands. Last year, people told us, so last year we asked a question around fashion where we asked people, are you likely to buy a local fashion brand if this was available for you to purchase on a store using your store account? And just over 70% of our respondents last year told us that they would. So this year, once again, this is one of those questions that we flipped around and we asked people, did you buy any of these local fashion brands? And people are telling us that they have. In fact, 7% of our respondents are telling us that they bought a Batu branded item. 4% are telling us that they bought an Amakibki branded item. Another 4% are telling us that they bought drip in the past year. So, I mean, some people have spent upwards of 3,000 rands on local fashion. So this is another one that we'll unpack. And without further ado, I'd like to please help me welcome our panel. I'll start with Sanele. Sanele, please welcome. Sanele Gaqa is a director of SupplyPal, and SupplyPal, in a nutshell, is a data analytics and insights company with a specific focus on informal economies. They have survey data and data on over 5,000 liquor outlets and 3,600 spaza shops. So they do a lot of this research. Sanele, please welcome.
Hi, Maurice. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to sharing some insights and looking at your report with other panelists
Thank you.
today.
Thank you. Thanks for making the time. And up next, I'd like to introduce Brian Magwayiba. Brian is the CEO and co-founder of Vuleka. Vuleka is an e-commerce and fintech platform structured to support the entire trading ecosystem within the informal sector. They help over 5,000 spaza shop owners to become more competitive. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
And up next, I'd like to introduce Jessica Boonstra. Jessica is the founder and CEO of YeboFresh. So YeboFresh is an award-winning digital commerce solution focusing on South Africa's townships. They supply groceries and other products and services to their customer base of over 7,000 independent businesses in 25 plus townships across the greater Cape Town as well as Johannesburg. Jessica, welcome to the panel.
Good morning. Delighted to be here. Thank you.
And up next, please welcome Thabo Manenje. Thabo is a brand manager at Batu, one of the footwear brands that people really love and have told us they bought in the past year. Thabo is an award-winning brand manager and strategist with experience in the retail, lifestyle, FMCG, and telecommunications industry. He has a passion for progressive African storytelling and taking African brands to greater frontiers. Thabo, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here today.
Awesome. Right. So another person who will join us a bit later on is our research partner, Stefan Eisen from Survey 54. He's on a flight at the moment, probably just landed. So he'll join us as we go. So I'd like to start with, I think, just a bit of a general question to everyone, starting with you, Sanele, excuse me. So one of the most common threads this year is the one of value, which I've already spoken about, where people are telling us that they're less likely to go for brands for the sake of it, but they're actually looking for value. How does this, in your view, change the landscape for brands, or has it changed the landscape in the past year, in your view?
Thanks, Maurice. So definitely, I think factors have definitely put the consumer under pressure. I mean, we're definitely seeing it in the market when
Sorry, Sanele, I seem to have lost you.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. We can hear you now. Yeah, but I think you had just started answering the question when we lost you.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, everything's fine on my side. So yeah, I was saying, we've certainly seen that the consumer is definitely under pressure, right? And I mean, we can see it in the businesses that we've helped that are in the food business. So we've seen guys selling reused oil as an example. Now, if you work in the spaza shop market, you know that oil is one of the biggest products, right? And again, they really look at the brand. You know, they're not, and I don't know if I can say brand names here, but they really look at the brand. But what they've started doing, we've seen our businesses that do fish and chips are selling a lot of the reuse. Now, this is an old concept, right? But we've definitely seen an increase now, which shows you that the consumer's under pressure, right? And value is actually what they're looking for, and they sort of taken a second look at brand affinity, which is consistent with what your report found. So we've seen this definitely in the market, and that's just one example that I've given.
Have you seen it, Brian, and how has this change really occurred in the spaces that you play over the past year?
So for us, it's mostly what we've seen is more brands that we used to sell a lot. We're not actually not being ordered that much on our platform. Smaller or more competitor brands that are maybe cheaper what are being requested by more of the spaza shops and the informal businesses that order through our platform. So I think people just need to stretch the rands that they've got. So that's why they're looking at that versus the brand loyalty that we used to see previously.
Right, right. Sure, Jessica. And I mean, Jessica, on your end, it's also, I mean, a lot on the B2B side as well. So are you seeing people stocking different types of brands than what they once did?
Oh, for sure. It's interesting, actually. We do see a distinction between different categories where, for example, in the grains or sugar category, fighter brands are shooting up at the expense of established brands. So, and that's a hard trend that we see throughout. Whereas, for example, in the energy drink category, the brand is really important, and no amount of discounting will make you buy a different brand that does not associate or does not make you feel proud of that specific brand. So definitely a distinction between the different categories, the likes of sugar, oil that were mentioned earlier, grains, very, very value dependent right now. Quality remains a key factor. So there's no compromise on quality. However, we see the consumer and thus our business owner being much more open to stocking fighter brands as opposed to previously the brand was everything.
Right, right. And Thabo, on your end, I mean, I know that you deal differently with the customer,
Yeah.
but on your end, what have you seen as the one sort of major change in this sort of value versus brand within the fashion space?
In the fashion space, I'm not going to disregard pricing. Pricing is really, really key in the fashion space. But then one thing that I've seen, and amongst other competitive brands, is there's a huge reliance on equity. There's a lot of equity job which was done in the previous year and right now in the first half of the year. So I think a lot of fashion brands are reverting to a lot of building a lot more equity on their end in order to convince those people to come back to them. Because at the end of the day, when you look at us, we're pretty much a bit more competitive in terms of pricing with our competitors. So we relied a bit more on driving more equity in order to pull these people in, and that's how we've been doing it in the past year and this first half of the year. But it's actually quite interesting on our end. And yeah, I don't want to say a bit more. So yeah, I've seen a bit more on equity, yeah.
Sure. I think on that, I want to stick with you for just my next question, Thabo.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we are noticing is increased trust in locally produced brands and products.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this within the township. Like, so if someone is a crafts person creating in the township, we're seeing that people are adopting that a lot more. And this ranges from food to fashion. Have you seen this play out in your space?
Yeah, we have, it's actually, we live in quite some interesting times, uptake has been really, really amazing at this point, but it's also showcases that a lot of work has really gone in behind these brands, especially in the fashion space, if I may speak on that, it shows that we've lived up to expectations, the quality is matching the demands that they've set, these international brands have set for us. And I know one of the most important things is the story. There's a lot of belief in local brands right now because the story really resonates with the people. It's not something that's a bit more far-fetched from them, but it's something that really started in your backyard. I mean, if you're like from Tembisa, our competitor started in Tembisa. If you're in Alex, our brand started in Alex, and this is people that you can relate to and people that you can see on a daily basis. So it's pretty much how it's played out in our spaces, and it's really, really been a nice one to witness.
Yeah. Sanele, have you seen a change rather in how this trust for local has changed the response that you're getting from some of the businesses that you're dealing with within this economy?
100%, Muniz. I think, like Thabo said, what these brands have managed to do quite well, this whole proximity to the consumer concept is very, 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 very comes to these township economies, right? If people can get to your product, and I mean, many alcohol brands have done this very well. In fact, even carbonated soda brands have done this, right? If a person's arm's length can get to your product, they're most likely to purchase it.
Yeah.
So that's what your Batus have done, right? This localized presence is really something that the consumers are seeing the product a lot more, and also the established brands have done this. By the way, you see them penetrating the main market quite well and showing themselves, and I mean that's why they go there, right? Once you're there, the consumers believe in you. The authenticity goes from above the line marketing to what they see on the ground, and then they want to purchase. So definitely what the local brands need to do is just keep with the localization concept and just making being available locally. And consumers are going to buy. Consumers are not going to leave to go and purchase somewhere else. They're going to purchase in their townships. And again, to your report, it's consistent with what the report is saying. Guys are spending more of their money locally because brands have become local.
Yeah. Over to you, Brian. Just slightly differently with the same question though, are you noticing a change in the kinds of products that people are asking for in comparison to kind of what kinds of brands, more than products, that people are asking for in comparison to what they asked for before? And are they starting to ask for more locally produced brands? And how is that kind of changing the game for you?
Yeah, so we are seeing that, and I think not to rehash anything else that's been said, but one of the biggest things that a lot of our customers are saying, mostly with the international brands, is that there's a lot of counterfeit like products out there, like from the brands. So what ends up happening is that now the customer doesn't know whether to trust that if they're buying this from this shop, then it's the actual original product, or it is something that was manufactured like in a factory or in a back room somewhere. So they would rather than go to something that they can authentically trust and follow the process of where it was produced from, and then know that like what they're getting is actually real. So we are getting a lot of those where someone says, I'm not really sure about this product. I'm not really sure about the pricing that I get it from, this place. Maybe rather give me this competitor brand or this competitor product rather, because I know where it's from and I can actually vouch or trust for it.
You bring up a very interesting point there, Brian, and I think I'd like you to expand on that, Jessica, on this whole idea of counterfeit products making it onto these, onto, call it spaza shops or in the informal market. We've been seeing this a lot on social media where people are, showing pictures or videos, whether real or not, of people having pouring a soft drink into a bottle by a soft drink brand, and is it real, is it not? How has this changed the trust that people have with brands?
As mentioned, quality is key, and it remains key. And if you've got a very small budget to spend, you're going to make sure that every rand is spent on the right product. So here's this balance to be found between, indeed, are there new brands that I trust, and here the social narrative is really important. You said earlier in the report that people listen to peers rather than to advertising, and we noticed that too. That definitely a brand tends to spread locally among people that have shown that this works, and this is something that you can trust. So the local narrative and the peer-to-peer information is key. We tend to find that with our spaza shops that have a very strong community role as a hub, they're much more likely to start selling new brands. So the trust with the business owner, in this case, kind of transfers onto the trust with the brands that they are selling. And then again, for us as a supplier, it is absolutely key that whatever we sell to that supplier is always spot on. So that basically the chain kind of moves on and on towards the consumer in the end.
Right. So you establish this trust, and you keep building on it, basically, as a brand and a supplier. Thabo, one of the things that has come up in the reports this year is that just over 25% of our respondents say they are likely to buy from a brand that understands them, while 4% cited advertising as a motivator. Of course, no two townships are the same, and we know this. How have you as a brand almost empowered yourself to understand your customer, given that people are saying they want to be understood by the brands that they buy?
So for us, it really goes more than just us as a marketing department or marketing within the brand. We've worked quite nicely, with, for instance, our human capital team in terms of hiring also the people that are pretty much from those areas. Maybe, for an example, it's more than just desktop research, but it's also us going deeply into townships and really finding out what's really going on. You might be surprised that sometimes your answer is not you going into a store and finding out what's happening in that store in the township, but it's also you going and hang out at the car wash, for example, on the weekend and finding out what the people are necessarily going through. So it's just a matter of finding the right people that will go in there and really find out, and taking that upon ourselves as a team also, or to really go in there and find out what's really happening in the departments. And you'd be quite really shocked to see some of the outcomes that we've seen, some of the findings that we've gotten from literally just going in there and spending time in the township over at desktop research, and just hanging out with the people and really speaking to them on a people level, because sometimes, information, we've seen that information sometimes might be a bit more restricted in terms of focus group, for an example, but then if you find that we've got a couple of people internally that necessarily go into these places and just really find out what's really happening and engage with them on the weekend, and just coming back, reverting back to us in terms of this is what they find out, this is where things are moving, shifts in terms of fashion also, because it's a really big one on our end. So we get to notice a lot of these things that are really happening. And, that's how we believe that we always have an edge over some of these brands because of this model, this informal model, let me put it like that we've uptaken within the brand.
Yeah. On that, Sanele, you also do a lot of research, of course, on behalf of some of these brands within the informal economy, within townships themselves. Are you finding that in the past year or more, brands are doing better in trying to understand the customer?
Definitely, I think in the last year we've done focus groups for telco. We've done various consumption surveys for liquor companies, and it's recurring work, right? So they consistently trying to understand what the market's doing. They're consistently trying to understand how they can reach their consumers better, understanding the behavior that the consumers are doing. So, for example, one of the pieces of work we did was around how many cell phones people have, how many SIM cards people have, why people are changing SIM cards. So again, this is showing you that the brands are starting to understand that consumers, and I mean, you spoke about the stop-fells being tech savvy, and you spoke about how people are now hustling and working online. So it means people are using things for different purposes, right? So I'm using this phone for this purpose. I'm using this SIM card for this purpose. So therefore, these brands are consistently trying to understand this consumer behavior. And like you said, no township is the same.
Yeah.
Different townships operate differently based on the needs of their township. So consumers are consistently shifting the game. And if you're a brand and you're using 3 months data, you might not be relevant today. So definitely brands understand that, and understand that this consumer is a new type of consumer, and they're consistently looking for ways to understand them. We've definitely seen it.
Brian, last year when we had a similar conversation when we launched the 2022 report, I recall that you were looking at getting smaller pack sizes into spaza shops. You were looking at enabling spaza shops to stock better and more product that people are looking for. In terms of your findings, just trying to help the spaza shop in the main, are you finding that brands are responsive in trying to understand the people on the ground? Have any things changed in the past year that you've kind of noticed based on what you were doing last year and what you're doing now, and how brands are responding?
Yes, so we've actually done some sampling with a couple of brands where they've come up and they've given us like smaller pack sizes to go out into the market with and try and resell this. And we saw a huge uptake with regards to that, because it also goes to the pricing thing as well, because the consumer is also buys like what they can afford. So as much as they want that brand or they want that product, they're gonna buy what they can afford. And if they get to at a smaller type like quantity, then they will be able to buy that. I mean, spaza shop owners themselves have taken the matter into their own hands, and they're actually opening up some big products and then selling them in smaller like pack sizes themselves, where it's affordable for the consumer.
And I want us to get into that a bit later on, because that's one of the things that we're also finding in the reports. Jessica, you deal with a lot of businesses within the informal economy. Do you feel as though the brands understand the Kasi economy and are responsive, especially since you help them reach some of these businesses?
Yeah, I'm going to more or less echo what Sanel is saying. I'm actually quite excited to see that movement happening. When we started the business a few years ago, a lot of pushback was township market, too difficult, too poor, not sure. We're now seeing this massive shift of the township market being the next frontier, and brands being really focused on understanding the market. We're doing a lot of work with brands with regards to both research, surveys, as well as, of course, we've got a wealth of patterns, buying patterns, and actual transaction data that we can share. And what we often do find is that when we're speaking to brands, that we can show them, look, this is what's happening, is move towards value, for example, or your brand losing against fighter brands. The knee-jerk reaction does tend to be, okay, let's do more marketing, or can we do, can we do some discounting? Whereas indeed, I want to agree with Sanele, actually understanding and what Thabo said earlier as well, actually understanding the customer, going out to the market, doing a lot of listening, having the conversations is essential, because it might indeed be that you've got the wrong pack size. You might have the wrong taste. You might have the wrong narrative with the customer. And no amount of marketing will solve that problem until you've actually listened to the consumer. So it's really exciting to see that trend happening, and brands understanding that and being willing to actually, go out into the market and having the conversations right there on the field with us, alongside us.
I think while sticking with you for my next question, one of the things that, of course, comes up is that we are seeing what's happening now, but there are also businesses that are coming up in the back that we aren't even aware are coming. And I know that the Yebo Fresh Business Lab recently launched, inviting 3,000 entrepreneurs. What kind of businesses are you seeing? What kind of entrepreneurs are you seeing that are either the same as what the township has, or different from what the township is currently having? What are people thinking from an entrepreneurial perspective that will affect brands?
So a bit about our program. So we've indeed invited 3,000 specifically South African-owned businesses on our program. These are both established businesses like Spaza, Shanyama, Kota, lots of beauty salons actually. And what we see in the data is a high representation of women, female South African business owners getting on the program and wanting to work with us. The program consists of a combination of e-learning, digital tools, and then as you progress through the program, the ability to actually get a store makeover. And this is all sponsored by brands and with the support of Jobs Fund. So what this allows us to do is get this deep insight and very intimate relationship with South African-owned businesses, understand how they're doing, what drives them, what their challenges are. And what we're finding is that the most successful businesses are the ones that have a slight differentiation or specialization. For example, Motsepe, who's doing 1,000 transactions a day in a relatively small space, because he's the bread guy. He's very, very strong in bread. That's his key value item. People know to come to him for the bread, and then they'll, it drives traffic, and he'll sell other items along. Or Zuzi, who does weigh and pay. We spoke about repackaging in small pack sizes. Very, very strong proposition, and that drives our traffic, and people know her for that. So we're seeing more and more of that, people specializing and getting really, really good in a specific category, specific type of product, and being popular from that perspective, as well as more crossovers. A spaza shop also doing prepared foods, or a prepared foods business also doing a little bit of a liquor. And so we're seeing that kind of transition happening more and more as we see more and more hybrid solutions coming up. So that's quite an exciting development.
Absolutely. I want to come back to you, Brian, on this weigh and pay model that Jessica has just mentioned, which is precisely what you're talking about, that spaza shop owners are opening up packs of items and selling them as smaller items. A spaza shop owner that we spoke to also told us the same, and he sent us this for the report. So just on that, what have you seen as the change, and kind of what's causing that change? Because people are telling us they find more value for money. Does that change what the spaza shop buys? So if I used to buy brand A because this was the brand of maize meal that people were buying the whole time, and now people are looking for brand B, for example, are you seeing a change in that because of this weigh and pay model?
So it changes things quite a bit, because whenever the spaza shop owner sometimes repackages like whatever product he's selling, that is not necessarily branded. So when they repackage and they sell it as maybe in a clear plastic bag, so that the consumer also sees what is there, or they sell it just as an item if it doesn't have its own packaging. So for them, that changes the demand of a specific brand, because if a person is looking for rice, for an example, they are just looking for rice of a certain quantity, and they're going to buy that rice of a certain quantity. However, it doesn't necessarily change or stop the demand, because again, it goes to quality. If someone is used to something, this is something that they'll still want to buy. So what we're getting from the shop owners is that maybe they end up then buying bigger pack sizes to be able to break them down and then sell them out to the shop owners, or put them in their own little mini hampers, which is something that one of our shop owners is doing, where you would have an essential hamper, where he's got rice, he's got cooking oil, he's got some sugar and stuff, and he sells that for $100. And then a person knows that when they've got that, it will last them a certain time period.
I see you nodding, Salele. You can respond to that, but I also want to ask you this question particularly, and you can respond to both. So, year on year, spending shifts between the small business and the supermarket, and one year people are telling us that they're buying more at the spaza shop. The next year people are telling us that they're buying more at supermarkets, and this of course is as a result of economic changes and opportunities and all of that. What's the most remarkable change in the past year that you've seen in comparison to the past 2 years in terms of this either brand loyalty or this shift in spend?
Yeah, look, I think if you look at what's happening, and I was nodding because Jessica's 100% right. These hybrid businesses are mushrooming. And I think you're going to see more of them. So what I mean by hybrid businesses, and this is the biggest shift that we've seen, is that, so firstly, the report's great, and I think there's a terminology issue that we need to sort of in the township economy get used to. So spaza shop versus super rate versus a spaza shop predominantly has always been the small outlet that's very close to you that you can go buy it, right? Then we've seen the proliferation of these super rates, which are very organized. And I mean, this is a complex market, and these businesses have come in and they're very organized. They plan a brand, and they set up as real businesses. Now, what that has done is forced the smaller business to do these hybrid businesses that Jessica speaks of. So all of a sudden, I used to be a spaza shop, but now I'm not. My business is not growing as much. So now I start doing prepared foods. Just to sort of catch another type of consumer that's already here, but I might as well sell them a warm Russian, right? And now, so that's actually what we've seen a lot, these hybrid businesses. And also what started to happen is some of the predominantly super rates that used to just do groceries are now actually starting to do liquor as well, because people are looking to sort of add more to their basket. So the shift we've seen is that people are starting to sort of add on another service to their business and another a service to their business as they try to sort of make more money. So we've seen that, and we're definitely going to continue to see more of that.
Right. Thabo, one of the things that we noticed last year, and it's a growing trend as well this year, is this adoption and desire of local fashion within the township space. What would you attribute this massive success to? I mean, I know that, you've worked in retail, you've worked in FMCG, you've worked within agencies, and you would know that we were all kind of, following international fashion brands. And we've now swapped that around to the local fashion brand with pride at that, right? What would you attribute this success and this adoption to?
I think for us, it's three key points, if I may put it like that. Firstly, I would like to believe it's availability. Like you're saying, back then you used to look at international brands quite a lot because there wasn't much of a basket in terms of available local brands in which you can really tap into. Yes, there were some, but not a lot of people knew pretty much about them. And also support has been really quite key in terms of, I know there's people from financial institutions right here watching us here, but their support has also been good, in terms of back then you'd find there's a brand that's being started, but then has no financial backing to keep on going, So the support from that element is really also attributed to the people uptaking a lot more local brands. And then also going back to the key one is, of course, relatability and the story, I feel that once people know about where you're from, what you're all about and what you're trying to achieve, and also seeing what you associated with, that helped in a bit of the spark in, or the spike in uptake from a local or township market, may put it like that. So it's pretty much those key points for me. Availability, being available, the support, from both ends, from the people and from some of these financial institutions, in terms of backing our entrepreneurs in there. And then, of course, from a story point of view, believing in our story and us creating a bit of association with the people.
Yeah, and I think this idea of belief in the story, and this idea of a local, not just a local, but an African story, because we've also seen that, Drip and Batu are in Africa's top 100 most admired brands as well. So that kind of spreads across. Brian, while sticking with this idea of value in brands, in which categories have you seen a change in terms of people looking for the most value among the space, rather in this space, or rather among the businesses that you're dealing with?
So it's been mostly in the essentials. So if you look at your rice, maize meal, cooking oil, sugar, that's where we've seen a lot of people wanting more like value for money than just like wanting value. Like in more the snacks and also in the cool drinks as well. So we've seen the cool drinks have got a lot of competitor brands coming in, and we're getting a lot of orders of cool drinks that we're not selling a lot more of in the past 2 years than this year. There's been a huge spike.
Is there's a lot, there's a lot being shared and said on social media about challenger brands, especially energy drinks within the soft drink space, energy drinks as well as kind of like cool drink, soft drinks. Are you seeing, is there is there an increase in the adoption of those brands, especially the challenger ones, in comparison to the ones that we've always known and grew up on?
Yeah, so I'm seeing it more in the cool drink space, like
Right.
versus the energy drink. So like a 2 liter cool drink for instance, where one cool drink would have been, twice the price of another one. People are choosing to go for like the cheaper one, and it also goes to, I think, affordability as well for the consumer that's buying. But like word of mouth plays a very big part as well, because once someone tastes or samples it and then says they like it, the next person is going to also try it and then say, why am I paying more for this versus that, and rather go with the cheaper product if quality is not compromised.
Right. Jessica, cash is king in the township economy quite a lot, and yet your findings, which you shared in the reports, tell us that there's a readiness within the township economy to go digital with their payments. Can you expand on this finding as well as what you believe drives it?
Yeah, I mean, what is quite unique about the South African market as opposed to, let's say, the Nigerian or the Kenyan market when it comes to online is that, again, cash is king, and we do not have yet these large solutions such as, let's say, an M-Pesa in Kenya. And I believe that's really, really has been holding back the advance of e-commerce. And what we are seeing lately, luckily, is this rise of alternative solutions. And so, for example, as a business, we have recently decided to go 100% cashless for reasons of safety, for reasons of acceleration of online. And what we've seen is actually quite a rapid adoption of our customers that were for 67% ready to go cashless, whether it was having Kazang, Flash, Shop-to-Shop, and other solutions. So that readiness was high, and it actually is accelerating right now. So we are feeling that businesses are realizing that, for starters, the solutions are here, and there are plenty. Many of our Spaza owners will actually have a battery of various solutions side by side. They'll have a Kazang device and a Flash device and a Blue Label device, all of them. So they have the solutions. And now more and more realizing that this is a safer way to go. It is the future. And that we need to make sure that they're encouraging their customers as well to start swiping more and more. So it will be a journey, because cash is king and will remain as such for a while, but we are seeing more and more that these businesses are realizing this is the way to go, and there's actually lots and lots of advantages of going cashless, and that's an exciting development that will, I believe, also further drive uptake of e-commerce solutions.
Yeah. Before I come to you, Sandile, if you are, for all the people listening out there, I'm asking the last sort of 2 questions before I open up for questions and comments. So please write your questions in the comments, and we'll address these as we go with our panel, and then we'll go into the next round of questions. Sane, let me come to you a bit. So 23% of our survey respondents say that they spend 25 to 50% of their income in the township. Have you noticed any changes in how and where people are spending in the past year? Have there been kind of changes? Has there been a shift in terms of where people are spending in the research that you're doing?
Definitely, Mongezi. So we did a piece of work with Distel, and we and Heineken as well, where we looked at about 300 businesses over the last year, and we've definitely seen the sort of the after effects of COVID, and where people were under lockdown, right? So people are definitely now spending locally, and what they're also doing is they're actually spending within the leisure market. So we definitely see people going out more and engaging within the leisure economy. So it's taverns where they're spending their money. But what has certainly happened is also that the investment that's now happened in these outlets, because I think the liquor companies, during lockdown, they realize that these upgrades that need to happen at these facilities to really transform the occasion around consumption of their brands in an upgraded environment Now, what this also does is that this investment, obviously, there's prepared foods now that are in these outlets. So all of a sudden, people are spending more and buying across, across products, across categories. And also, then what we also found is that jobs, there's an increase in jobs. All of a sudden, people have now got a kitchen, so they need someone to come and cook in their kitchen. So that's another +1 job. And then all of a sudden, with the increased patronage, then there's not more services that are required around cleaning, around making sure that the facility is safe. All of a sudden, that's a +1 job and a +1 job. So we certainly have seen consumers are spending locally, and that is actually good for our economy in the township economy, because now it's jobs. People are spending here, people are consuming here. So it's actually been. I'm very excited about the next few years.
No, that's really great, because again, it talks to this idea of trust, which is something that in some instances we weren't seeing a lot within the township economy. Like, people would have rather, driven out of the township, taken a taxi somewhere, because they trust something outside of their township, or a brand that's outside of their township, more than they do what they've got locally. Tabo, I've noticed that South African fashion brands do a lot of collaboration with local known names and influential names. How much of your digital marketing is dedicated to influencer marketing and collaboration, and how much of that are you noticing comes back by way of sales from the township market?
Most of our digital marketing efforts are pretty much centered around influencer marketing and collaborations, because we have a really nice story to tell around it. We feel that with that, the people get to see our brand for what it is and who it's meant for. I think maybe amongst this room or on social media might take it lightly that we've partnered with a certain individual, and somebody might see that as them securing the bag. But then when you go back and look at it deeper, when you go into a township, for instance, you'll see that this actually means quite a lot for some of the people, in terms of you partnering, for an example, with the Somizi, or him endorsing our brand. It goes a long way in terms of people that are his loyalists will go and purchase that shoe, if you may look back, or if maybe you might not know, he was one of the first people that endorsed our brand back then. And, it's till today, our founder still says that that endorsement from him, there was no money transaction and all of those things, but it really went a long way in terms of people now noticing who Batu is and what Batu is all about, and then it went as far as now us coming up with a shoe with him, doing a collaboration, so meet the X Batu shoe, and that shoe has literally gone out to become top 3 most selling SKUs within the business to date, and it's because solely from influencer marketing and collaboration. So we still rely a bit more on those, a lot more on those, in terms of the people that we partner, and also the brands in which we partner it, because they really take us a long way in terms of revenue, and they really open us to a lot of people, if I put it like that. We might think that everyone knows about you or knows who you are, but then it's not necessarily the case sometimes. So you need these type of people to really take your message out there and take your story out there and represent what Batu is all about, or what your brand is pretty much all about. So they work really quite nicely for us, and we keep on going on that element, and we keep on working on trying to find new ways on how to better, of course, the experience on that level.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, I noticed that Batu X Somizi issue, and I know about that collaboration, and I've been seeing quite a bit of this. It's just, I think sometimes one wonders how effective it is from a sales front, and also from how I suppose the township market responds to it as well. And I will just go to some of the questions that we've got here. Jade is very interested in the energy drink conversation. Yeah, I think that's definitely one that we'll have. So Dennis is asking you specifically, Jessica, what is the feeling towards the ultra premium energy drink category? So a price of about 15 Rand per can as opposed to 7 Rand. Like what's the adoption like within that space?
Yeah, I saw the question. Interesting. I believe that what we see, and I'd love to hear the impressions of others, is that actually the energy drink category is a bit less price sensitive than some of the others, like the staples. Energy drinks are maybe almost in that sense like fashion brands. It matters what brand you carry. It's very much about the narrative. It's very much about the brand and what it says. So we have found that in some cases, discounting certain brands without actually building the narrative or building the awareness did not work. This was not a matter of just discounting in order to drive sales. The brand had to be built. There had to be trust. There had to be a name. I think in energy brands, in energy drinks, we're looking at a very specific category that is very much about it's about being seen. It's about the brand. It's about the taste. It's about word of mouth over pricing. But I'd love to hear the impressions of others, because this is what we've seen. We have done quite a bit of marketing work and a bit of discounting and some specials with energy drinks, and we saw that again they were less price sensitive than some of the other brands and the other types of product categories.
I'll come to you, Brian. Any thoughts?
So I think I do agree there, especially with the energy drinks. I mean, there is some sort of status that is also associated like with them. And then another thing is that people also understand, just as Thabo keeps saying, the brand story of a lot of these energy drinks. So like when they understand and they want that, versus someone just saying, you know what, I literally just want to have a meal. This is this is what I'm drinking, and because of this is what I drink, this is the type of person that I am, or I'm perceived to be. So yeah, no, with the energy drinks, we really have not seen like a change in the demand.
Sanel, have you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so we haven't done much work on energy drinks specifically, but I've certainly, again, anecdotally, because we're on the ground a lot, I've often wondered, if again these consumers, do they purchase these products for the purpose or the function that it's made for? So, for example, an energy drink, we see it being drunk consistently just through the day, whether it's the morning, whether it's, so there's no occasion in terms of I needed to boost up my energy levels. It's drank as if it's just a
soft drink.
Yeah, as a soft drink. And 100%, I think from what we've seen, it's one specific brand that's dominating that we've seen, and it doesn't matter what the price is. But yeah, it doesn't matter what the price is. They just buy it, and they buy a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me go to this question here from Lynn. So the question is, what do you think will happen to people who earn more tips when cashless comes in? Playground in Bloemfontein this weekend, they don't have cash, but patrons need the cash for tips. Any advice? I'll start with, I'll start with you, Thabo. My view is that some of these platforms do have a way that you could tip. Sometimes you could ask for it as a customer. In some instances, the patron kind of says there is that option, but is it a way for us to kind of conscientize ourselves and conscientize the customer around?
It's an interesting one, because I've also asked myself this question, quite a bit. I think it's an opportunity really for us, to really also engage these businesses also in terms of, if you including the tip in that payment that you're making, does it also go back to the people? Because there's also been a huge question around you paying via card, or you're paying via card, but then the money doesn't necessarily get to the waiter. It's just a matter of having these businesses being true to themselves and being honest, really, and just making sure that when we as customers come and pay, you know, via card, that the money goes back to the people. And then I think there shouldn't be much more problems if that transaction also happens, because it's a big issue right now that's currently happening in these spaces.
I'll come to you, Jessica, with that same question. In terms of going cashless, is it a conscientization thing of the customer? How do we still ensure that people who get those tips still get them when we go cashless, or people who used to get them rather still do?
Well, interesting. I find that a lot of the digital solutions actually have built-in ways to provide tips. Actually, they often encourage you, right? Even having a built-in, do you want to tip 10%, 15%, 20%, or maybe not, right? And it actually makes you feel guilty if you don't press any of the buttons above. So there's actually, I mean, this can be a trend towards more structured, more transparent, and actually more structural tipping, as long as the tools are bearing in mind that they indeed they're developed around the needs in the market. So, for example, a typical prepared foods business will have to have this tipping solutions, whereas in the spaza space, it's much less likely. And we are seeing that the solutions are developing very, very quickly now. I mentioned Kazang, shop-to-shop, Flash earlier. PayShap is, of course, hitting the market. So this will be an exciting year around cashless, and we'll see solutions evolving and developing very, very rapidly around the needs of the market. And I believe that tipping will be one of those key needs that will be solved for.
Robin is asking, Robin is saying rather, we've done research with informal traders who tell us they couldn't afford banking fees and don't trust banks. Are they finding that companies like Yoko, Flash, iCoca are more trustworthy and affordable than a bank? What sense are you getting from how people perceive going cashless in terms of this sort of trust or trust deficit that some say they have or had with banks?
Sorry, was that a question towards me? I lost connection.
Yeah. I think I'll start with you, because because you just spoke about going cashless and we are seeing more and more of this. So I'd like to get a sense of whether there is a sort of more trust going with some of these platforms like Flash and Yoko that people have in comparison to how much they trust or said they trusted banks.
Yeah, I mean, particularly when it comes to the likes of a Flash or a shop-to-shop, they're actually relatively cheaper when it comes to transaction fees compared to a bank or compared to depositing cash. So for sure, there's an advantage there. And in many cases, they actually have wallets that allow you to interact and transact without needing a bank account. So essentially, for example, I would buy airtime, I'd swipe my card, and my Flash wallet would get topped up, and I can use that same wallet to then later on pay my suppliers. So we've now got an end-to-end solution in place with much lower transaction fees than that of a bank, and that is indeed entirely built around the needs of the township market. And I believe that parties like the ones you mentioned here have become really, really smart at listening to the consumer. We spoke about that earlier, listening to the business owners and developing end-to-end solutions entirely built around that market. So definitely that will be a huge factor. And parties who will do more of that in future will thrive in the township market.
Yeah. Brian, what have you noticed in terms of trust and payment platforms?
So we're getting something slightly different, because we're getting a lot of pushback from trying to push people towards these platforms. So a lot of what the shop owners or our customers are saying are that, you know what, I'm getting cash from my customer, and how do I then digitize this to be able to pay you? That's the first thing. The second thing also then goes to the instant gratification that they get from actually getting cash or from using cash. So the moment that he's got cash, he knows that for him to get the cash out of his system, he would rather pay using that cash, like this is trying to look for or find platforms to use to actually make payments. So I think Jessica did mention this earlier on. A lot of the shop owners would have 3, 4, 5 different devices that are are from like suppliers, but they use them for different things. So for some of them, they use them for actually buying or selling airtime, but then rarely are we finding that they're using them for swiping, because then the merchant also then has to pay that fee, and the fee that the merchant is paying ends up taking or eating into the margin or the revenue that they're making. So they'd rather deal with cash. If something is 10 Rand, then it's 10 Rand. It's not necessarily like 9 Rand 30 cents at the end of the day when they get the money.
Thabo, I want to come to you with this, but slightly differently. You mentioned in the report that you've noticed a spike in sales through sort of credit, through a credit facility that you kind of have. What's the sort of adoption in terms of the use of credit, especially for a challenger brand such as Batu? You're muted.
I struggle to hear you a bit, but then I'll just take it from here. If I got the question correctly, I know we've seen a bit of an uptake, in terms of credit, in our stores, particularly, and over the years, especially last year, I think we've recorded one of the best figures in terms of sales coming in from a credit point of view. Of course, we have used a third party in terms of that, and this pretty much just showcases that even though that people are going through really tough times right now, but they're also reverting to credit in terms of wanting to always look good from a fashion point of view. Wanting to always support these local brands. They're not going to be stopped by the economic situation that they're going through or what they're necessarily going through, as long as there is a bit of a way in which we can work our way in terms of making sure that they make the payment, of course, with the use of this credit facility that we have in our stores, and I mean, it keeps on growing. Last year our figures were really quite surprising, from our end, and this year it just literally took up from last year, and the figures just keep on going up and up from that level. And it's also a way of us to really we've quite noticed that it's a way of us to really go back to the people, and just also trying to make this journey a bit more easy for them, because when you go back to the township market, like part of what we're talking about right now in terms of cash is always king, in the township, and then other people would always look away that much from credit. So it's also on us, on our point of view, to go into the township and educate the people a bit more on this credit route in which the people could necessarily take in order to get our products. I'm not too sure if I'm answering you correctly, because I lost you.
Yeah, no, you have. No, absolutely. Sanele, I want to come to you with the same question around trust and payment platforms. What are you seeing in the research that you're doing and among the businesses that you deal with?
Yeah, thanks. And I think this could be a full chapter on its own. And like Brian said, and again, I don't want to harp on this, but we need to be clear on the terminology that we use here, because this term cash king, right? Because we've seen the research that we did. There's a big difference between the B2B component and then the B2C component, right? So the B2B guys, when they're buying, let's say it's a spotter shop buying from a Jessica or buying from a manufacturer or buying from a wholesaler, right? Those guys are quite happy to use digital platforms. We've seen it. They used ours as well. But then there's a lot of complexity around, when they make the payment, when the delivery arrives on their doorstep, and then they'd say, you know what, I'd rather go buy directly from a wholesaler because they don't trust that the product will get here, right? However, if the product is on credit, if it's got 14-day or terms, or if Jessica is giving him terms, more than happy to take Jessica's stock, right? Keep it on me. I'll pay 14 days later. Because what also happens, and I'm speaking in the spotter shop world specifically, what also then happens the consumer's buying on credit to the spotter shop as well. Not necessarily always cash is king there, right? So he's got to wait for his money from the local, and that's some very big part that's happening on the ground, right? So there's that component. Then the research we've seen, we certainly think that the consumer is not going to move directly to these digital payment platforms like QR codes, and they're not. They're going to go from cash to plastic first. They want to pay with their card because they can see the machine going, the card going on the machine. I want the machine to print a slip, mostly, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to take a whole lot of education, like Tabo said, on trusting, on the guys trusting that, if I order clothing online or something online, I can pay it with the QR code and so forth. That's gonna take time, but certainly there's a big case for plastic for now. And again, to Brian's point, it depends which segment you're in. Spotter shop,
Yes. Yeah.
the transaction values are small. Guys are not paying by card, and they're mostly using those devices to do value-added services, which is airtime, data, electricity. What it does do, it gets feet to the door, right?
Right. Right.
And certainly, though, once you get to the liquor outlets, transaction value is a lot higher, right? Consumers are now quite happy to swipe for those for those transactions. But the one thing we've seen is that the merchant will choose a device that does same-day settlement, which means that if I bank with FNB, I'm going to try and use my FNB device because all my transactions that I recorded on Friday night I'm gonna get my money on Saturday morning so that I can go top up and restock, which is a cash flow issue, right? So the guys are predominantly got 4 to 5 devices depending on their bank accounts and who's banking with who. So that's what we've seen. And again, it's a trust issue. Do I bank with the bank? And that's why you see a lot of guys actually doing these, like you've seen Vodacom now have VodaPay. You've seen Time Bank has also got a virtual bank that they've attached to their devices. But trust again, and guys using card. There's something else
that I think you're bringing in there, which Brian, you mentioned last year, and I'd like you to kind of expand on that and how that has been going in terms of just the adoption, which is this extending this credit lines, extending credit, Spaza Shop extending credit to their customer, and you extending credit to them and the supplier, and so on and so forth. How has that been adopted? One by sort of the supplier and the big brand on the one side, and the store owner on the ground on the other.
Okay, so I think from the supplier and the big brand side, these are accounts that they usually have. So for them, it's something that they've been doing already to a lot of distributors and a lot of wholesalers. So that hasn't necessarily changed. The big change has been from where we are to the Spaza Shop or the informal business owner, because these are guys that usually would not have gotten this credit, right? And when we extend these terms to them, we've seen an increase in the basket size, firstly, and we've seen them essentially also increasing the frequency of the buying, because now he's got that bit of a cushion to be able to sell first and then be able to pay us back. But that also goes down to the consumer that buys from them, because remember the consumer, the Spaza Shop was taking the risk of actually giving the consumer these goods because they trust them. It's people that they've known. It's within the same maybe street, and there's a relationship that's already been built there. So they take that risk, and when they take the risk, they previously did not have a cushion on the other side to say, you know what, I can take the risk, and then if this person, by the time this person pays me back, and then I would have made my money in a way. But then right now that we are extending it to them, he knows that he can get this. He's got time to pay it back. He gives it to his customer, and by the time the customer pays him back, he still then has got time to be able to pay like us back, which means that he's making essentially more transactions or more sales from his shop.
That makes sense. I'd like to just shift a little bit towards our delivery services, Jessica. One of the things that I mentioned when we started is that there was a lot of media coverage during the pandemic around the emergence of delivery services with a township focus. These include services like Delivery Ka Speed, Swiper, and of course on the B2B side, Yebo Fresh. In your view, why do customers gravitate towards these new players as opposed to established ones? And what has been driving the growth?
Well, there's a reason why startups tend to change the world, right? And what we've seen for starters is the customer centricity. So each of the players around the market, around the table here, has found a gap that clearly existed and has developed an understanding of what was needed to fill that gap. And what we find is that startups tend to be more agile and tend to be able to move a lot faster, tend to be really kind of single-mindedly focused on solving that particular problem, whereas a big corporate will have a million different points to focus on. The startup will have that one problem and an obsession to solving that problem and doing everything to solve that problem and to find a solution for that. And then we're finding that there is a lower tolerance for mistakes with a startup. We ourselves, as a business, we have worked with very small iterative learning cycles, experimenting, pivoting, until we got something right. And then we did the next thing and experimenting. There's that tolerance in startups. So you can make mistakes. You can introduce a concept and then change it later. You can experiment with price points. Corporates cannot do that. And this actually makes for a really exciting sandbox. And in a market like the township market, which is still very much under development, where nobody's actually really figured it out how to do online properly. People around the table here are probably closest to figuring it out. This is typically an environment where you have to have that sandbox, those short learning cycles, and that experimentation. So this is why I feel that brands like the ones here around the table have actually found that gap, have had an obsession for finding a solution to close the gap, and then have had the focus and the agility to solve until they came with something that works, and that worked. Clearly, the brands that you just spoke about are doing that really well.
Yeah. Now with just 11 minutes left of this fascinating conversation, I'd like to just ask a question around, I think, the internet penetration in townships in the main, and this is for everyone. I'll start with you, Brian. How has how has internet penetration in the townships changed how you engage with your customer there? In your case, of course, it's B2B, and also now leading to the consumer. How has that changed the game in the past year? Because last year, just over 40% of our respondents said they had an internet connection or some kind of internet connection at home. And this year, we are seeing that people are now also working online more. How has this changed how you specifically interact and engage or deal with our businesses within the Kasi economy, Brian?
Okay, so what we found is that, like, the beauty of the connection to the internet is that people are not only using the data that they've got. The city or like government is putting up free Wi-Fi spots, so people are actually able to have access to the internet there. We've moved a lot of our transactions to online, either through our platform, but not only through our platform, also through WhatsApp. So we're doing a lot of like WhatsApp transactions where the orders are now coming in there because it's easier for people to use that versus the more traditional way of where, although we still have agents on the ground, a lot more of our transactions are coming through via WhatsApp than the guys that we had. So that obviously means that we have also changed the way in which we interacting with the customers, where we can send a message, we can shoot a message out. We've got a special, we've got, we can communicate with the customer to tell them your order's on the way, your order will be delivered at this time. If there are issues with it or there are problems, the customer can respond back there. Because one of the biggest things that they had as an issue was, if they're trying to use online, the only way that they can contact an online shop if they've got a problem is either a phone call or send an email. And with the type of market that we're in, that doesn't work for them.
Right. Thabo, coming to you with the same question in terms of your engagement with the customer in the township, how is this increased access to the internet and connectivity changed how you reach out to these spaces? I've noticed, that you are opening up quite a number of stores and you are spread out across the country, and a lot of this I'm seeing on social media platforms and social networks. But how does it change how you engage with your customer?
This has been a life changer on our end.
I've lost you there, Thabo. I think the connection is bad. Thabo, we'll come back to you when the connection is sorted, because right now we can't hear you. I'll come to you, Jessica. So in terms of internet penetration in townships over the past, say, year or two, have you seen any changes in how the businesses that you work with want to engage or engage with you?
What we're finding is that of our customers, again, the businesses that we work with, about 87% actually has a smartphone, and about 47% actively uses Facebook or WhatsApp to interact with their customers, does marketing, is actually introducing some kind of delivery service, really interesting as well. Interestingly, if you ask them, are you using the internet? They'll often say, internet, no, I'm not online. But then if you ask, hey, do you have WhatsApp or are you on Facebook? Then they'll say yes, right? So it's also really important how you ask the question, because a lot of people do consider online or apps, not for me, but actually they spend a lot of time online through WhatsApp, through Facebook and other similar services. Because that is not perceived to be online. This is just what I do. This is just how I talk to my friends. This is how I talk to my customers. And actually a lot of businesses indeed have a little WhatsApp shop, have a list of customers that they market to online, and have started introducing all kinds of interesting delivery services as a very recent and quite successful development. So it's online.
And I think that's also an interesting observation, but like what's online and what's internet and kind of the platforms that people use. Sanele, in terms of the same question, how have you noticed how the internet enables, or at least connectivity within the township environment specifically, enables business, and how it's different from anywhere else that is outside of these environments?
Firstly, I'd like to say, Jessica, that last mile delivery, I feel for those guys in the last mile delivery space. It's by far the most difficult thing to solve in this township economy. We will solve cashless and other ones way before we solve last mile delivery, but good luck. We all here to sort of help. Look, Mongezi, simple answer to your question. If it wasn't for internet penetration, we wouldn't have a business. I mean that with all sincerity. We would not have a business, because, like Jessica said, it also depends on how you ask the question. So we go out there, and we've actually figured out this concept of syndicating our field workers. So we've got field workers on the ground, because the one thing you do know about townships, there's a lot of people, and a lot of people sitting there with all various qualifications. So people are able to be upskilled to do certain jobs. So we arm people with our proprietary tech, and they collect data on our behalf. Yes, while we have offline capability, it certainly helps that the internet is there. People are able to capture information and then send it back to us. Again, we train online. So we use the internet to train our people, to upskill them, because we can't have them all coming to the office and train them, right? So certainly
So certainly these field worker apps that we've got, and then on the so that's the back end. Then on the front end, obviously we have this interactive platform that our brands can get onto and get data as far as recent as yesterday. So we wouldn't be able to provide the service that we provide if internet wasn't there in the township. So certainly it changed the game, and I think we're going to see further enhancements, but it definitely has changed the game, definitely.
Okay, so there's a question that I'd like to ask here, which will probably be our last question from the comments, and I'd like us to just maybe take 30 seconds each to answer it, as much as we can. So it's a question by Paul, and he asks, how much are spaza shop owners taking advantage of collective buying, and how is their approach improving pricing in the townships? I'll start with you, Brian. Are spaza shop owners taking advantage of bulk buying, and is it improving pricing?
So we're finding that we have obviously different types of spaza shop owners, right? There are those that bulk buy like for themselves, which have got their own collectives. There are those that bulk buy in a way through platforms like ours, where we do the bulk buying on their behalf, and there are those that literally just go out to a wholesaler and just buy when they do want to buy. So definitely yes, it does improve the pricing that they get, because then when bulk buying, one can negotiate discounts, one can actually get products cheaper because of bulk buying versus buying a single item. So I think, again, I'll go back to saying there are different types of the shops that we can group in, and the ones that are taking advantage of the bulk buying are definitely able to improve the pricing that they get.
Jessica, are you noticing how are spaza shops doing it effectively, the bulk buying thing, and is it improving pricing for them and also for the customer?
Similar observations as Brian. Typically, what you see is that Somalis and Ethiopian business owners tend to buy in clans, group together and buy for multiple stores in parallel, whereas unfortunately, many South African business owners buy individually, thereby having a disadvantage compared to foreign-owned businesses. Much like Brian, we indeed do empower our businesses to both network as well as to buy in bulk. And to quickly go back to the credit solution that we saw earlier,
Sure.
What we allow our customers to do is to buy now and pay later. We've developed algorithms allowing us to define exactly who the most reliable customers are. And we're doing that so reliably that we actually get a 97% repayment rate. And again, I just want to emphasize that often the informal market is seen as a market that is kind of dangerous to lend into. These are completely uncollateralized loans. But yet we get this very, very high repayment rate because our customers want to stay on the program, and realizing that indeed now I start with 1,500 Rand of credit. If I repay, I can buy more. Next time I go up to 2,500, 3,500, and so on. So this is a huge loyalty driver for us. And for the customers, this means I can buy in bulk. I can pay up to 7 days later. And again, to then build the bridge to the cashless solution that we talked about earlier. Then this gives me a number of days to top up my wallet to make sure that I can make the payment. It also reduces returns, showing up at the customer and them saying, oops, I don't have cash today. So the entire offering, the combination of allowing to bulk buy, buy now, pay later, and cashless is a very strong loyalty driver and a strong empowerment factor for our customers and allowing them to grow.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Thabo, I'll come to you with just final closing questions. So, as a challenger brand that is sought after not only in townships but across the continent, I mean, I mentioned that you are in the Africa's top 100 most admired brands list. How do you maintain your relevancy within the township market through customer experience and center the customer in how you do things and how you market and communicate?
maintaining relevance in the township market is pretty much tough, if I may say that, to be honest with you. Because I mean, I'm going to mention a couple of brands, just taking you back to what we've realized with some of the brands that are big international brands, even, that have been liked and loved in the townships, and how they've somewhat tried to maintain relevance in that level or in that space, and then others who've lost it along the way. It's just to show you how much of a bit of a difficult focus area it is. I'm just going to mention a couple of brands, not to trash anyone. If I may take you from a fashion point of view, if you look at what's there was a brand called Super Dry. Back in the township, it was really big, like 3 to 5 years, around 3 to 5 years ago. It was quite big. Every guy or every person in the township really wanted to have this brand, and that's not everyone that can afford it. But then that's where it also concepts also came in, But a lot of people wanted to have this brand, and a lot of people really started wearing this brand. But then, even though their marketing or advertising wasn't necessarily centered around the township market, but then a lot of people, you found that wearing that brand, but then they couldn't necessarily keep it up, and then you found that over time it kind of fell flat. Maybe it's because people don't see them coming to them and really speaking to them. We don't know. Or maybe them not finding a store near them. We don't know. And then we've also seen a brand like, they call it the Township Cavel. It was big back then. But then back then, when you had a Cavella, you literally were the most relevant person in the township. You were the most sought after person in the township. And then it died down. Also with that, is it a matter of them not speaking to the people, them not being available, or pricing also? Is it big with the current economic situations that we're in? And then we've seen right now what's happening with your G stars right now, big international brand coming back, people loving them, but then also how they've maintained it, I think on my end is a matter of, from a pricing point of view, the outlets, near these townships, and I put it like that. Like, I mean, around the Sandton area, there's an outlet in Woodmead, which is also accessible. If you can't afford it there, maybe let's go back here. Also, speaking to the people in some of their campaigns, and then also from a pricing point of view, also being available on a TSG point of view, account credit, that's all going back into credit. So for our end, it was all about how we maintain relevance in this township market, is trying as much as possible to see where the trends are and how the people are moving. If it's a matter of a price point of view, do you now create an outlet, which you've already created, rolled out 2 outlets, which will make it a bit more easier to access us? And also, do you associate yourself with the people from the townships, also going back to our influencer marketing in terms of maintaining relevance? We use the likes of Doss, for example, if you know him, a boy from the township also has a good story to tell, blew up on TikTok. Do you use those people to always remain relevant? Because these are the people that the township people look up to, for an example. So it's all us trying to factor in all these trends or elements that we've seen happening out there, and us going into the market and picking up the pricing is the problem. Relevance in terms of who you associated is the problem. Just trying to always keep top of mind in that level, and always work with people from the township, and even create some moments whereby people can necessarily, as much as possible, resonate with who you are and what you're pretty much trying to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sanele, I want to come to you, I think, also with just your closing remarks based on this question. And the question is, really, with the township economy changing as much as it is, partly due to challenges in the economic climate, how do brands keep themselves relevant through customer experience? Because I mean, we've mentioned all of these things, from payments to connectivity and understanding the customer, being on the ground. What else around customer experience can brands do better to keep themselves relevant?
100%. So I think Monges, they've actually started doing this, and what we've been asking for good 10, 15 years is investment, right?
So investment in our townships, not only from an understanding where they spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising and branding, but actually investment in these businesses that actually these consumers migrate to. So the very same consumer that you're targeting actually plays in the township environment and is living there, is now working there as more and more infrastructure and investment comes into townships. So you need to invest back into these communities, spend money within these communities to ensure that this economic growth is happening locally. And I think we've actually started seeing it. And a lot of guys we're working with are investing both in infrastructure development in these small businesses, making sure that these businesses can serve their customers better. So like a laundromat, invest in a laundromat, ensure that they've got the necessary equipment to service customers, invest in food selling businesses, invest in township businesses. And that's actually how you start differentiating yourselves as brands as well, But we're certainly seeing a lot of investment starting to come through, but it just needs to trickle down through to the small businesses. At the moment, I think, it always comes at the top here and stays at the top, but it actually needs to find its way right down to the small businesses. And I think we're going to continue to see a lot of growth in this economy, as long as these brands keep pumping money in the right spaces.
Yeah. So I think the keyword there is investment that I'm getting. Brian, coming to you with the same question rather. How do brands keep themselves relevant to customer experience and through offering good customer experience, especially because you deal with big brands and manufacturers on the one side, and also the store owner on the other, who then touches the customer in some way or another. So how do they keep themselves relevant? Have you got some insight into how they can do this?
So I think just the one thing that hasn't been mentioned, because a couple of things have been mentioned, and is actually keeping the shop owner or the person that's selling the product also as part of the brand story. So yes, you can market or you can get to understand the consumer of your product, but the person that sells your product to that consumer also needs to be part of that brand story, and there needs to be something in it for them, because that's the last touch point that's there between your brand and the consumer. So by not involving them and just focusing most on the consumer, these people will sell what it is that they can push to their consumers. So keeping them involved and getting them having something in it for them, or keeping relevant with the people that sell the products as well, apart from just the consumer that consumes the product.
Thank you. That's valuable. Jessica, I think same question. How do these brands keep themselves relevant through customer experience?
Yeah, so a lot has been said, right? The points about value, the points about innovation. For me, a point that's really, really key is indeed for brands to realize that the age of talking to customers via advertisement, TV, etc. is over. It's all about listening and conversation. And the conversation needs to be held indeed in the market, with the business owners, with the consumers, but also online. There's some interesting comments happening around Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. It's really important that brands indeed engage with customers and move from being this very big brand that is far away and typically used to just send products through wholesalers, then ending up in the market, to moving much, much closer to the consumer, moving closer to the business owner, understanding what's going on, understanding the current challenges like load shedding, like food market volatility, and understanding the trends that go on. And listening and having the conversation is the most important way to do so. And then what I also find is that brands do tend to have large and long innovation cycles. Earlier on, we spoke about working with startups and working with businesses that are closer in the market. I believe there's a real opportunity to actually get closer to the market by cooperating with brands that are upcoming and startups that are in the market that have short innovation cycles and are right there having a good feel with what's going on.
Yeah, that's a great point to end off. I mean, there was a lot that was said from investment to providing and proving value to trying a combination of things in order to be relevant and also having a really great story to tell and share. Thank you very much to our panel for joining us on this conversation and sharing your really valuable insight, your hugely valuable insights. And to you out there listening, the report is available for download at rogerwilco.co.za. Keep sharing insights using hashtag TCX Report 2023. We'll answer some of your questions. We'll be available on LinkedIn. We're also planning more webinars to unpack some of the chapters, especially the Stockfeld chapter, which we didn't talk about much here, as well as connectivity and the importance of connectivity within this market. So to that end, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your week.